So recently I made a video of myself talking about doing a trick tip for inward heels, but then I start to get hit with exams, then finals, and then I screwed up my big toe skating a few weeks ago, and then it started snowing, and now I'm here and I hate everything. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give you guys a few main tips on inward heels so that you guys have a little something to lean on until I make the official video. Also, I want to point out that my best tip for inward heels is at this time of the video, but I strongly recommend that you stay for the whole video if you can. So for inwards, don't be surprised if you see me repeating myself, because this here is my official script for inward heels. And so I just want to give you guys a little something to know, you know? First things first, make sure that your backside pop shoves and your heel flips are pretty solid. Like I'm talking maybe 2 or 3 out of 5 minimum if you can. If you can't, you really got to get these tricks down before you want to try the inward heel. Foot placement. Place your front foot like how you normally have it for heel flips, like around here. Now I personally put my front foot near the middle of the board when it comes to inward heels, but it's just personal preference. Maybe you prefer over here in the middle of the board, or maybe you prefer a little bit further up the board. It's all up to you. But I would personally recommend having your front foot near the middle of the board. I think that's probably the best starting point. Now, as you practice your inward heel and as you kind of feel them out, you know, try other foot positions to see if those work better for you. I just think that having your front foot in the middle will probably generate the most success for people. Now, I'm not too sure if you guys remember this, but I've always had trouble with inward heels. They've always been that weird, awkward trick for me. But it wasn't until recently that my inwards just got really consistent. Now here's one thing that I changed that really helped my consistency with inward heels. So an inward heel is a backside pop shove plus a heel flip. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna set my back foot like a backside pop shove. And I prefer to set my back foot like this for backside pop shoves. But this is what was screwing me up. Now the problem I had with having my back foot like this is when I would go for the backside pop shove part of the inward heel, my board would start to kind of tilt as I do my inward heel. So when you have that tilt, it makes it very difficult to get that flick in there because the board is tilted down. So that was my big problem. My back foot would tilt the board so that I really couldn't get my heel flip in there consistently. So what I did was I took my back foot and I moved it to the midpoint edge of the tail. That way the board will rotate horizontally like this instead of tilting like this. So when it rotates horizontally, it's a lot easier to get that flick in there. So if you're not doing this already, I highly recommend that you have your back foot near the mid edge of the tail. And that's another thing. Don't be a cheater by doing a pressure flip and kicking out. That is not an inward heel at all. I've already found like a few videos from a few popular YouTube skaters who claim that they do inwards, and I look at them and it's like, that's obviously a pressure flip. You know, you didn't even drag up the board. You're kicking out like this. You know, I look at these videos and I'm like, there is no way that your front foot influenced the board at all. It looks like it's all done with the back foot. Now, beginner skaters can easily be fooled by this, but if you're a more veteran skater, you could definitely pick up that these guys don't drag up the board and they do not flick out at all. It's just like a mindless kick outwards. For an inward heel, you need to use your heel to flick the board. You want to have your heel meet the edge of the board, because that's the only way you're going to get that heel flip in there, is if your heel meets the edge of the skateboard. If you're flicking like this just makes no sense. Why are you flicking backwards? That does not help anything. You want to flick forwards for one thing, and you want to flick outwards, because that's the only way you're going to get that heel flip in there. So if you see somebody do this, it's not a heel flip. So hopefully I could clear the air on some of this stuff. So very quickly, a pressure flip is performed just by your back foot. Your back foot does all the rotation. Your front foot just lifts up and does absolutely nothing. For inward heels, your back foot does a backside pop shove and your front foot flicks a heel flip. So these are two distinct tricks. So for an inward heel, you need an obvious drag and an obvious flick with your heel to get the inward heel. Now, if you do these things with the pressure flip, the board won't do anything. It's just gonna be like, well, I don't know what you're trying to do, and it just doesn't do anything. So that is your sign to tell if someone did a pressure flip or an inward heel, is if someone dragged up the board and used their heel to flick the edge of the skateboard. The inward heel is a lot more awkward than a pressure flip. That's why you may see a few people go towards the pressure flip route so that they will have an easier time getting the trick. But the whole point of the inward heel is that it's awkward. You know, it's weird. You should not be using any of these methods to make the trick more comfortable for you, because you will just end up killing the trick and make the trick look super ugly and disgusting. You know, me, among all the other skaters who know inwards, do not want to be grouped in with those cheap inwards, because obviously one of those inwards takes a lot more time, a lot more dedication than the other. Alright, so enough with my mini rant. We already covered foot placement. We haven't really gone further than that, partially because I've been ranting for a little bit. So what's going to happen is you're going to distribute your weight just like all the other tricks that you know. It's no big deal. You're going to shove with your back foot and jump forwards, just like a regular backside pop shove. So whatever you do with your weight, your jump, and your shove for backside pop shoves, do that for inwards exactly. It's literally that. I'm not skimping out on information. Just literally do that. Your front foot is going to be dragging up the board and flicking more outwards than usual. Like for heel flips, I like to flick like this. For inwards, you want to flick like that. If you flick like a heel flip for your inward heels, you will just end up intercepting the board, causing no rotation. If you flick out at more of an angle, your front foot doesn't intercept the board, and the board is able to do the full rotation. There are some people who swear by flicking almost straight outwards, but I personally find that incredibly awkward. I prefer to go at more of an angle than usual. I personally flick at the mid angle between flicking like a heel flip and flicking straight out, so that mid angle will be somewhere around here in this general area. So once you have fully flicked outwards, just like all the other tricks that you know, just tuck your legs into your body so that your knees are pretty close to your chest, and then just wait for the board to come around and try to land it. Now there's another trick tip out there for inward heels that has 350,000 views, and that like bar is pretty huge. So put that all together and you got people who believe that this is a textbook trick tip for inward heels. So in the case with this trick tip, the guy uses his toes to push the board down so that it rotates kind of like an inward heel. So the kicker is that he pushes down and his front foot moves backwards, and you see absolutely no contact with the heel. You know, it's fine to struggle with inward heels, but you should have the self-awareness to not teach a trick that you are not good at. You know, videos like this I really wouldn't care about, but having that much popularity, you know, 350,000 views and almost 4,000 likes, that's really concerning, because that's a lot of people who do not know what an inward heel is. So moral of the story, use your heel to flick the edge of the skateboard. No ifs, no ands, no buts. You need to have an obvious heel flip for your inward heel. If you're flicking backwards, don't even try to pass that as an inward heel, because if you flick backwards, the only way to get this rotation legitimately is to start the rotation once the board spun maybe, 120 degrees? So this makes no sense. You want to start your flick right when you start your rotation, just like 360 flips, hard flips, varial flips. It's all the same thing. You want to start your flick right when you start the rotation. The inward heel is actually a very, very simple trick. However, there is one thing that will screw everybody up, even me, for the longest period of time, which is rotating the board and flicking the board at the same time. That is the awkward thing about this trick, and to me personally, I feel that this is the only barrier people have from learning this trick, just getting over how awkward it is. Once you can get over it, it's just so easy. That's why some people tilt their toes down and move backwards, or they pressure flip the board just to alleviate the awkwardness of the trick, but that is visually seen and it looks so ugly, and you do not want to do that. I want to teach you guys the right way to do an inward heel flip. So to help get over this awkwardness, there's a lot of people out there who say to flick outwards so that the board can rotate between your legs. Now this is actually what was messing me up. You know, using this visualization, it was messing up my flick, it was messing up my rotation. I did not like thinking of the inward heel like that. You know, maybe it would work for you, but it definitely did not work for me. So the second thing that I changed was how I visualized the trick. And this is really what made inwards just click for me. I used to think, wow, I'm never gonna get inward heels, because I either get a heel flip without the backside pop shove, or I get the backside pop shove without the heel flip. I always get one of the rotations, but the second one never falls through. So I'm like, man, I must have like 20,000 problems with this trick. Until I changed one thing, how I visualized the trick. I realized that I was good at everything about inward heels, except for how I viewed it. And I feel that there's a lot of people out there who is exactly the same way. This little tweak that I did made such a huge difference. It gave me the other 50% of the trick so that I could land it. So here is my new way to visualize inward heels. Now, it makes sense in my head, and I'm gonna try to word it as best as I can. So I'm gonna try to attack it in as many angles as I can so that everybody can understand. So what I do is exactly like I told you. I pop, shove, and jump forward exactly like a pop shove. And when I flick a little bit more outwards than my usual heel flip. But right before I start the trick, I pretend that my front bolts down does not exist. This part of the board does not matter at all. The only thing that I focus on is the nose of the board. From here to here is the only thing that I focus on. And to clarify, like I said, this is all just a visualization. When I do this trick, I am not actually staring at the nose of the board. Because when I do this trick and all the other tricks I do, when I look down, I am forced to stare at the lower half of the board. It's just the way things are. But when I say I'm visually focusing on the nose, I mean that I'm focusing on the nose in my head. This visualization that I'm telling you is what is happening in my head. Like, this visualization is simply just a mental picture. And this mental picture simplifies the trick to make it a little less awkward for me personally. And I hope that translates to some of you guys as well. So right now, I am not giving any tips. What I'm doing is I'm painting a picture for you for your brain to save for later. So mentally, you will focus on the nose. This is literally what I visualize. All I see when I do inward heels is just a floating nose in midair. So when I flick outwards at a little bit more of an angle than usual, I want to get the nose to almost brush up against the inside of my front foot and continue its path. Like, I want to get the very edge of the nose to get very close to the inside of my front foot right here. Like, this is how I flick the board. This is the inside of my front foot. So just visualize yourself flicking out and the very edge of the nose getting really close to the inside of your front foot and then continuing the path like this. But keep in mind, all you see is a floating nose. You don't care about the rest of the board. It does not exist. So what you want to see is you flicking out and the very edge of the nose of the board almost gliding past the inside of your front foot and then moving away. So that is all I think about. None of that in between the leg mess. Just get the edge of the nose to get really close to the inside of your front foot and move past. So again, you flick out, the very edge of the nose of the board gets really close to the inside of your front foot and then moves away. Once you're at this point of the trick, it may seem weird because you're only at like 45 degrees, but you have the full rotation at this point. At this point, the trick is done. You won. You got through the hardest part of the trick. So just pick up both of your feet and tuck them into your body, let the board rotate, and then try to land it. So again, I'm gonna repeat myself for like the 20th time. Only focus on the nose. The nose is the only thing that exists. So like, this is the nose. Nothing is here. There's no board. It's just a nose that's floating around. You wanna flick more outwards than usual, and your goal is to have the very edge of your nose almost brush up against the inside of your front foot and continue its path. It's all one fluid motion. And hopefully you should be seeing a little bit more progression, and hopefully that makes sense. So 2 things that I changed. I now place my back foot near the middle edge of the tail. And the second thing, when I look down at my board, all I see is just a floating nose. The rest of my board is intangible. And when I flick out, I want to get the very edge of the nose to almost brush up against the inside of my front foot and continue its path. So that is my trick tip for inward heels, though it is unofficial. So let me know if you have any problems that I haven't explicitly talked about, or you still have problems, and I'll try to help you out as best as I can. I've been in a rut the past few months because there's so much stuff that's going on, and I'm graduating in like 3 months, so that's a thing. So therefore, I haven't really been replying to comments in a timely manner that I would like to. But this video will take priority when it comes to comments, and I still really need to reply to everybody who's been commenting on my trick tips. I've gotten to like a few videos, but I just keep getting piled up with more and more comments, and I want to get those done. And yeah, like I said before, this is my official script for inward heels. A lot of that stuff is going to be repeated in my official video. I may even treat this video as like a supplement so that I don't have to do as much work. Because I just have a lot more ideas I have floating around in my head that I really want to make videos of. And if you have a video of you or someone doing an inward heel and you're not too sure if it's a legitimate inward heel or not, I will be more than happy to clear that up for you. And with that note, Good luck.